Hello, everybody. David Shuster here. Jessica Tarlov, the lone liberal host on Fox, keeps proving she's a national treasure amidst the conservative garbage on Fox News. Tarlov just shamed her right-wing colleagues in epic fashion on live television. The issue involved the deportation and indefinite imprisonment of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. The Department of Justice admits his deportation to a jail in El Salvador was a mistake, and the U.S. Supreme Court, by a 9-0 ruling, said the Trump administration should facilitate Garcia's release. But the Trump administration is refusing, and conservatives, including Fox's Jeanine Pirro, keep citing an unproven claim about Garcia by a disgraced law enforcement officer. Tarlov is hitting back. Watch.
Abrego Garcia, there is no proof that he was an MS-13 member, and it has been debunked many times.
It's been debunked by liberal newspapers.
That's not true.
In a court of law, a section I-113 or 123 is reliable, verifiable proof that you were a member of a gang, and he was never able to rebut it.
It was based on double hearsay testimony and also a detective who was indicted merely weeks later for providing confidential information to a sex worker. He was also allegedly an alcoholic. That's how we got into this. But the point is that this man has been living in this country, out in public, meeting on an annual basis with his DHS caseworker. He goes in once a year. He talks to them. They know where he works. He's an on-the-books worker. This is not somebody who is a gangbanger. This is not somebody who has committed any other crime besides being here in this country. And he came here also based on credible threat of being murdered by a gang at home who was threatening his entire family.
Facts. Tarlov calmly but firmly cited facts, and Jeanine Pirro couldn't say a word. Because when the make-believe nonsense of Pirro and other conservatives gets stacked up against reality and the truth, the Trump talking points fall apart. Tarlov wasn't done humiliating the Fox conservatives. She pointed out that under the very law the Trump administration is citing, the 1790s Alien Enemies Act, people in America from a country at war with the United States are still required to receive due process before being deported or imprisoned. This has always been the case under the law, including during World War II.
Under the Alien Enemies Act, you deserve due process. And that's what the Supreme Court ruled. And if you go back to World War II, when we were invoking this same act, that people who were here undocumented from Japan, from Germany, from Italy, were allowed to go into a court where they could argue that they weren't a danger to this nation. Abrego Garcia was not afforded that right to come into court and to argue as to why he should not be deported. And it is not the same thing to deport someone to their home country as to send them to a prison.
Well, then,
you know that.
First of all, the 9-0 decision by the Supreme Court held that the judge was wrong to think that she or he could enjoin the whole nation and dictate to a president international policy.
Facilitate his return.
No. The facilitation, as the Attorney General herself said, was that if they decide to return him.
Actually, the U.S. Supreme Court ordered the Trump administration to facilitate Garcia's return from El Salvador. And the Trump administration has facilitated other migrant returns from El Salvador, merely by asking the El Salvadoran government and President Bukele for release. But the Trump administration is not asking in Garcia's case and is thereby defying the U.S. Supreme Court.
You can see a full-blown constitutional crisis playing out in front of our eyes. The Supreme Court ruled 9-0 that he had to be returned. President Bukele is lying when he says that he can't get him back. We know that he can return people because he returned people from the original shipment. There were women that were sent there, and he said, oh, no, you shouldn't be here. And there were some Venezuelans that he didn't want. He said, okay, you shouldn't be here, and he shipped them on back. They think that it's funny. Getting that hot mic moment where Donald Trump and the El Salvadorian president are talking, they're kind of loitering around at the front of the Oval Office, where they're joking about, like, oh, wouldn't it be great if you could take our homegrown ones? You cannot legally send Americans to an El Salvadorian prison camp, no matter what they have done. Senator Kennedy was on our air earlier this afternoon with Sandra and John and said as much.
Whether or not you agree with the president's suggestion of sending U.S.-born, U.S. citizens accused and who have committed crimes to notorious prisons like the one in El Salvador.
You mean sending them to foreign countries?
Yes.
No, I don't agree with that.
Senator Kennedy does not agree with sending Americans to be jailed in a foreign country. And he's one of the most conservative members of the U.S. Senate. Now, to be fair, Jessica Tarlov is not the only Fox host who has condemned the Trump administration's defiance of the U.S. Supreme Court in the Garcia case, former Republican House member Trey Gowdy, who hosts a weekend show on Fox, is also saying on Fox that the Trump administration is wrong.
So what do you think the White House should do in this situation?
I mean, I think what they ought to do is probably follow the judge's order and the Supreme Court decision, which used the word facilitate. Also in that opinion, Martha, were the words accidental, mistake, and illegal. I mean, those are not three good words you want in a Supreme Court decision. So, look, I don't want the guy in the United States. Although I will say this, if the press secretary's facts are right, it should be a pretty easy conviction. And do I have more confidence in U.S. prisons or El Salvadorian prisons? U.S. prisons. I don't know if you remember Pablo Escobar or not in Colombia, but that was more like the sanctuary at Kiowa or the Ritz-Carlton. That's not a real prison. So I have more confidence in U.S. prosecutors. I have more confidence in the U.S. prison system. If the president doesn't agree with that, and he may not, then bring him back and then remove him to another country. Appeal the removal order. But what we can't have is any executive disobeying or not following a judge's decision, even if you disagree with it.
Gowdy underscored that the solution to all of this is simple and easy. The Trump administration should ask El Salvador to release Garcia, bring Garcia back to the United States, and give Garcia a hearing and the due process that our Constitution requires. If the Trump Justice Department has evidence that Garcia is a terrorist or gang member, they should present that evidence in court. And if the evidence is clear, a judge will then rule that Garcia can be deported. But for the Trump administration to simply bypass the Constitution and defy the U.S. Supreme Court, that is outrageous. And don't take my word for it, or Jessica Tarlov's or Trey Gowdy's. Even the late conservative Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia would be infuriated by the Trump administration. You see, years ago, in a case about due process, he wrote, "It is well established that the Fifth Amendment entitles aliens to due process of law in deportation hearings." So this isn't complicated. Kudos to Jessica Tarlov for trying to break it down, though, in easy-to-understand terms and with basic facts. She may never convince the conservatives on the five, but when history records who spoke out for the Constitution and against the fascist impulses of the Trump administration, Jessica Tarlov will be remembered as a hero.
Signing an executive order to do away with birthright citizenship, which is literally in the Constitution, sending troops into blue cities.
Oh, you mean anchor babies?
Unilaterally implementing tariffs, which Congress gets to do. I already talked about the 170 Americans who've been locked up. Cracking down on the First Amendment, detaining students for op-eds you don't like, targeting law firms, universities, reallocating funds appropriated by Congress to fund your big ICE force, firing inspectors generals that are looking into your friends like Elon Musk, making billions off of crypto scams, and your kids are running all over the world making deals. And the Trump administration has defied 1 in 3 judges that have ruled against him. And you're seeing that from judges appointed up from Reagan up to Donald Trump that are saying absolutely not. You are breaking the law in taking some of these actions.
Defying judges, ignoring the Constitution's bribery or emoluments clause, throwing out the separation of powers, denying hundreds of people, including Americans, basic due process. As Tarlov pointed out, with Donald Trump, it goes on and on. And never mind Trump's trampling on the Constitution, the President of the United States continues to coarsen and cheapen America's culture with tacky, crass, and juvenile insults against his critics. Over the weekend, Trump posted an AI-generated fever dream in which Trump reigned supreme, bombing protesters with what appears to be feces from a fighter jet. Yes, feces. Not content to violate the Constitution and defile the truth, Trump now aims to defecate, symbolically, digitally, and publicly, upon the people themselves. And not from a golden throne or bully pulpit, but from the cockpit of a pixelated F-22 labeled King Trump, as though his bloated ego had finally shattered whatever remained of decency and class in the Oval Office into Trump's political reality, an open sewer. And what response did this autocratic absurdity spark from Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson? Watch.
Speaker Johnson, you say that the Democrats had a Hate America rally, but what does it say that the President of the United States over the weekend released a video of him pooping on the American people?
The president uses social media to make a point. You can argue he's probably the most effective person who's ever used social media for that. He is using satire to make a point.
He is using satire to make a point. Okay, what's that point? That Trump's opponent should be bombed with crap? In reality, Donald Trump has already done that, including with the actions Jessica Tarlov listed that silenced her colleagues in Fox. If Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson actually had a spine and any shame, he would call out Trump's satire as undignified and ridiculous. A president who responds to dissent with fantasies of imperial air raids and lavatorial insult has crossed not merely a line of decorum, but a Rubicon of the mind. But in Trump's America, the president is a clown and the Republican House Speaker is his ventriloquist dummy. Together, they preside not over a government, but over a long-running gag at the expense of the American people. And for the record, an estimated 7 million people participated in the No King's Day protests. Despite conservative claims there would be violence and mayhem, every protest was peaceful, and the crowds were large, as even Fox News reported.
People are shoulder to shoulder. They're waving signs. They're getting fired up as these guest speakers are talking. And organizers say they're expecting up to 10,000 people here today, which is checking out as of now. And this is just one of the more than 2,500 rallies planned nationwide today, like in Washington, D.C. Here's a live look at the protests there. And several high-profile Democrats are attending amid the government shutdown. That includes people like Senators Chuck Schumer, Bernie Sanders, and others. And overall, people attending these rallies say President Trump is acting more like a king. They believe he's abusing his power, specifically citing recent ICE arrests and National Guard troops in U.S. cities.
But again, there were countless issues and frustrations with Trump that prompted millions of people to take to the streets. Democratic leaders said the nationwide demonstrations are what patriotism looks like. By contrast, Donald Trump's grotesqueries and disregard for constitutional basics are what authoritarianism looks like. Still, Trump's highest profile defenders are now spinning hard, ignoring Trump's actions and trying to delegitimize the No King's Day protests.
I think it's all a deflection, Jesse. The people that in Ohio, what they actually care about is how do you improve educational excellence in our schools? How do you improve the economy, continue to grow jobs, deliver economic growth? These are areas in which Democrats have absolutely no vision. So when you lack vision, what do? You pound the table on everything else that doesn't matter as a distraction and a deflection. The good news is, Jesse, people here aren't falling for it. People across the country aren't falling for it. You said it well. No King's Day, we already did that. On July 4th of 1776, we commemorate that every year, and that's what makes this country great.
Commemorating July 4th is not what makes our country great. What makes our country great is promoting and defending the Constitution and exercising constitutional rights. What Trump keeps doing is tearing the Constitution apart, and he thinks he can get away with it. But the protests underscored that Americans are getting angrier and more disturbed by the day at Trump's illegal and unconstitutional power grabs. Polls show Americans are also infuriated over Trump damaging the economy and making life more difficult for nearly everybody but the rich. Oh, and for the record, Democrats have clear plans on how to grow the economy, deliver more jobs, and boost the working class. But it all starts with stopping Trump. First by seizing control back of Congress in the midterm elections, and then by winning the White House in 2028. Of course, under King Trump and his GOP redistricting efforts, there are legitimate questions about the fairness and integrity of the next election. Still, the American people are awakening. Defiance and peaceful protests are growing, and basic facts keep silencing Trump sycophants and propagandists, including some of the hosts on Fox News.
But this idea that the Epstein files is going to be reframed as a Democratic hoax is never going to work. The American public is not cool with it. What does he have? Trump has a minus 39 approval on handling the Epstein files, and only 45% of Republicans even approve at this point.
Conservative host Brian Kilmeade, who is usually relegated to the dim-witted Fox and Friends, made an appearance on this day on The Five. Kilmeade claimed the Epstein files will mostly hurt Democrats.
This is going to be one of these things that Greg uses as an example of backfiring instead of using the word backfiring. This is going to be like demanding that Jeffrey Epstein files be let go, opened up, and then turning out most of the stuff is bad about you, from Bill Gates to Bill Clinton to Plaskett. This is just Hakeem Jeffries. This is just the beginning. It's going to get a lot worse for Democrats.
Republicans have jumped on claims that Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic leader in the House, once tried to make a connection with Jeffrey Epstein. Headline: Top House Democrats solicited campaign funds from Epstein. Newsweek: House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries faced fresh scrutiny Tuesday after Republicans released newly obtained documents showing that a political firm working to boost his early congressional career allegedly once invited sex offender Jeffrey Epstein to a Democratic fundraising event. Amidst the GOP talking points, cue Jessica Tarlov.
The narrative about Hakeem Jeffries, everyone at this table knows how fundraising emails work. So that email was from someone named Lisa Rossi, who's from a random fundraising group called Dynamic SRG, asking if Epstein wants to go to a generic DCCC dinner that Obama and Jeffries were going to be at. There was never any meeting. There was never any donation. And he appears one time in the Epstein files. By the Miami Herald's count, Trump is mentioned over 1,000 times in the latest tranche that just got out.
Not only do the documents underscore that Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were close friends for more than a decade, there are Epstein emails saying that Donald Trump knew about the girls and that Trump spent hours alone with Epstein victims. To try and create distance from Epstein, Donald Trump keeps claiming their friendship ended 20 years ago.
I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. I threw him out of my club many years ago because I thought he was a sick pervert.
But newly released emails from the Epstein estate indicate Donald Trump called Epstein on election night in 2016 and that Donald Trump saw Epstein in the fall of 2017, 10 months into Donald Trump's first presidential term.
And people are not going to forget that in 2002, for instance, Trump said, "I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with." It's even said he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. I have never alleged, and I am not alleging now, that Donald Trump has done anything untoward with an underage woman. But if you want to be throwing around single emails from a random fundraising group to try to make Brooklyn Barack look bad, and not acknowledge how many times Donald Trump is mentioned in these files, you're just going to look dumb.
Look dumb. And that is Brian Kilmeade's cue.
And I would encourage everyone to not look
But
dumb.
it's other people mentioning him. It's not his fault when people want to get him.
I just read a quote.
But that was one quote, but other people are mentioning it to
Brian,
stop him. They're like the other person. They were all trying to stop Trump.
Why did he want the files to not come out this badly?
Trump didn't want the files to come out because he wants America to focus on all the successes in his first 10 months. And no Republicans are willing to repeat that Trump talking point. But there are many conservatives who believe that some of Donald Trump's friends and fellow billionaires are in the files after having done illegal things, possibly with young girls. And the conservative argument goes along the lines of, well, Trump dug in against the Epstein files for so long because he was trying to protect his friends. I find that argument preposterous, of course. I think Donald Trump is all over the files and is simply trying to protect himself. Furthermore, the claim that Trump was just trying to protect his friends is undermined by what Trump and many Republicans are saying now. They claim that high-profile Democrats that Trump was never friends with are in the files. Whatever. Give Donald Trump a day or two and his claims will change again. We are already hearing Donald Trump insist that if there is anything about him in the files or any incriminating pictures or video, well, it's because Democrats doctored the Epstein files with AI and Photoshop. Reality is not something Donald Trump can handle, and delusions are the only thing he feels comfortable spewing to his MAGA diehard supporters. In any case, kudos to Jessica Tarlov for setting the record straight as she always does, and for shaming the stupidity and mendacity of Tarlov's conservative Fox colleagues. Tarlov does this every day. A few weeks ago, she left her co-host speechless as she listed Donald Trump's law-breaking and his shredding of the Constitution.
Signing an executive order to do away with birthright citizenship, which is literally in the Constitution. Sending troops into blue cities.
Oh, you mean anchor
unilaterally, unilaterally implementing tariffs, which Congress gets to do. I already talked about the 170 Americans who've been locked up. Cracking down on the First Amendment, detaining students for op-eds you don't like, targeting law firms, universities, reallocating funds appropriated by Congress to fund your big ICE force, firing inspectors generals that are looking into your friends like Elon Musk, making billions off of crypto scams, and your kids are running all over the world making deals. And the Trump administration has defied 1 in 3 judges that have ruled against him. And you're seeing that from judges appointed up from Reagan up to Donald Trump that are saying absolutely not. You are breaking the law in taking some of these actions.
Because of the constant Fox repetition of Trump and GOP talking points, many of us find the channel unwatchable. But amidst it all, Jessica Tarlov is a source of hope and truth. And whenever she humiliates the Fox numbskulls, it does bring many of us joy.